Everybody, a blessed Sunday winter day. So we're gonna start with our initial message. It's the way, the truth, and the life. Shakespeare, chapter 9. Christian gathering. On the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were assembling with doors of the place locked for the fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be with you." Ever since the day of Christ's glorious resurrection, earthly humankind has been considered worthy of relations with the spirit world. Due to the need to keep the human mind from considering such a possible too soon, the book of Deuteronomy forbid any sort of communication with those who had gone through the portal of the grave. However, just as Jesus used forgiveness and unlimited love to mitigate the old law of inflexible justice, he further softened the demand of the Mosaic Code by coming to meet his heart-sick disciples. When the doors were locked to the tumultuous vibration from outside, adversaries would not trouble the heart of those who eagerly desire divine communion. The beloved Master appeared, increase everyone's hope in the life eternal as that unforgettable hour, the activity of exchange between the visible and invisible world was established. The Christian family, in its many expressions, would never be without the sweet nourishment of its loving and close-knit gathering. From then on, disciples would meet in the synagogues of Jerusalem as well as in the catacombs of Rome. And in modern times, the deepest meaning of such a gathering remains the same, whether in Catholic or Protestant church or in Spiritist Center. There should in one object to seek inspiration from the highest realms. The only difference is that within the spiritist environment, the soul is able to gratify itself more fully in higher flights because it does not concern itself with certain dogmas, prejudice, or with an organized clerk. Thank you. All right, friends, so we're going to go ahead and pray. Here we go. All right, so we are going to pray. Welcome to those who are online joining us. We close our eyes
We feel ourselves here in the moment, feeling the loving vibrations of Christ, who lovingly cares for each and every one of us. Dear Mother, Father God, we thank you for bringing us together today, either in person or online. May our hearts be joined with the objective of study, of improvement, and of service. As we gather together, we feel the loving presence of our spirit mentors, our spirit guide to help us in this blessed reincarnation. And we pray that the spiritual fluids here present may be changed by the spirit mentors, giving each and every one of us our personal session of healing, of consolation. We pray, God, that we can feel present and close to you as much as we feel your loving kindness in everyday life. We pray for those who have their names in the book of prayer, who are in need of help of all kinds, here close to us or far. May the Spirit mentors and your messengers reach each and every one of us on the earth, from those who take care of countries to all of us who care for our own families and neighborhoods. May we stay under your presence. May we stay under your protection. With your permission, we begin our studies today. And so be it. Friends, what a blessing to be here. And as we are here talking about blessed reincarnation, for those who are joining us online, you can send us a message. We'll see your message and talk to you that way. In the month of January, we were talking about tools for inner reform, divine providence, so we know that there's a lot of resources available to us, available to our mentors to help us. We talked about expanding the spiritual relationships through our service to one another. Then we talked about service, which is any act that helps ourselves and others. Right? It's through service and through interaction and fulfilling the laws of society and progress, for example, that we can get better. And today we're going to talk about the blessings of reincarnation. Next week, touch base a little bit with the making of reincarnatory plans, so we can have a bigger view, because each and every one of us is different, but there's a certain amount of order and some steps that we all go through. Some of us will have more to say on how we come back. Others will have help because we did whatever in previous lives and we needed a little bit more help. In the Spirit's book, it's around question 238, I believe. The spirits tell us that we can choose the trials, for example, and some choose more, and some. No, we choose a trial, but we're not choosing every single thing. But we choose a certain theme, and the things that happen to us due to the theme. And in the books of Andrea Luiz, you see spirits who are suffering, like his dad, who agrees to return, but is in a situation entangled with two other spirits. And then his mother, his former wife, is the one with the mentors in the background preparing the situation. And other books that describe spirits taken directly from the lower zones to reincarnation. So there are different levels because we are different levels of evolution. And then, of course, you had the freedom and the free will to choose in another life. But we're free to sow, but the harvest is mandatory. So maybe if someone is suffering in the spiritual realm, they may not have the mental ability, capacity to plan, but they chose before, then they have to. God can impose certain trial on us because that's what we need. But before we go there, we talk about what is reincarnation. So there are certain definitions we want to talk about, right? You know that you are reincarnated today, and the only spirit that incarnated on the earth is Christ, because he came once. So your first incarnation somewhere was probably not on the earth, unless the earth was a moment of a primitive world. So our first incarnation and reincarnations occurring in worlds that are more compatible with the first stages of development. We are in a world of trials and expiations. So a lot of us are returning, to do things coming from other planets. But reincarnation, I found two for us to focus on Medium's book. You have a return of a spirit to corporeal life, plurality of existences in this planet and in other material worlds. And we talked about divine providence, we talked about God, the material principle, and the spiritual principle. And you need the material principle and the spiritual principle in relationship to one another. As we evolve, we have more tools to work on the material principle, which is the things we have here. Remember, 2,000 years ago, Jesus didn't have this materials here. He had the power of his own energy to speak to the crowd. But we took this time to create things. So our intelligence improves, our moral condition improves. We're able to actualize different things in this world, with the materials of this world, with our spiritual body in this world. Such as we know Jupiter is the most evolved planet in the solar system. They have their own set of spirits around them and a set of incarnations in the Spiritist magazine of Kardec's time. 1868 is the year, and talks about being, different bodies, length of course, the length of life, the characteristic of childhood is much different. But it's just a return of us, of when you are in the spiritual realm, you're a spirit, but you have your paraspiritual body, which is different depending on the level of evolution. When we are reincarnated, as in the Spirit's book, you are a soul. So a reincarnated spirit is a soul, is a technical definition. And in the gospel, he says reincarnation is the return of our soul or spirit to the physical life in another body, which was newly formed for it, in which has nothing to do with the previous one. In a sense that we're not recycling your previous body, but of course there might be similarities, as we're going to see. If you keep reincarnating on the same family in the same place, you may have certain physical composition that allows you to live in that space. Think if you were to reincarnate for the first time in the Arctic Circle, which is much colder, you have to have physical composition and tools that are different if you reincarnate in the equator, which is the temperature is much easier. But reincarnate means re is again, and incarnate comes from flesh, so it's returning to the flesh. And then we know this is not our first life on the earth, and it may not be the last, depending on how we attune with the progress. But there may be spirits around us, 8 billion incarnates, and there's the spirit friends around us. So there might be spirits from other places here, as we see in the Way to the Light. And we see spirits like in the series of Emmanuel from Alcyone, who comes from a different cluster of stars completely. She comes to help a specific person, so that's a mission, a specific trial. She accepts the risks of being around us and involved in our fluid, and just like you say, I'm going to be reborn, as in the Spirit's book says, maybe you've committed crimes in a past life, and then you're reborn in an area that is crime related, and then you have to have a lot of strength to resist the temptation of joining, because we are social beings, we do things that other friends do, that kind of stuff. So the divine wisdom of reincarnation. So there's got to be a reason for us to use the logic of having one life. So one life is not logical because it doesn't explain the differences between us. It doesn't afford opportunities to repair mistakes. So if we think this is it, first problem, God needs to be ready and at our will to form a soul or a spirit that is brand new the moment of the zygote formation, the moment of conception, which is a few hours. It takes time for the egg and the sperm to come together. So God has to be there waiting for us to conduct our businesses, and all we're going to make, which God could do. God is omnipotent. But then it will be a brand new spirit that would be like, oh, I'll give you this one, I'll give you this one, and there will be a new set of. And once you're done, you go back and nothing was left. So what is the point? What is the point of being good? What is the point of material progress? What is the point of thinking that equality is important, that social justice is important, that having opportunities for all children is important? Just take care of what's mine, and people feed for themselves. And also important thing is opportunity to repair mistakes. So we all make mistakes, and God is so gracious that grants us another opportunity for us to be here again with the people who maybe hurt one another, help one another. There's always a combination of people, antipathies and sympathies, talks about it in the spiritual book. So you feel like attracted to someone, you feel affinity to them, maybe you lived together and you worked together before, in this planet or others. But then we think about multiple lives. There's a logic to explain the differences. So why am I here in this comfortable location? Not in Richmond, living in one of the motels down the road where the homeless families live. Why are their spirits together in that situation? Why is someone born in Ukraine and having to go for war now, or in Africa going through very difficult conditions of life? Because we all agree that when you have resources, life is more comfortable. It's a fact, right? If I have more, I can have things. I don't have to shout to you. So all I have to do is to take off the microphone, and there's more effort in my part and your part to be like, what you say? And it's God's justice and mercy. So it takes a while for spirits to come together. It takes a split of a second for us to do dumb things that we're going to regret, but it takes a while sometimes to repair. But we don't wait for the next lifetime, right? We try to do the best we can here. And some things will be left. And importantly, today you have the strength in the conditions you have. Maybe you go through like certain medical condition that is difficult. But that could be something resulting of thousands of years ago, something you did. But today we have the strength to undergo something like cancer, which is a really difficult thing for us to go, to purge out those, because you're literally talking about rebalancing the spiritual composition. It takes a lot to go through that type of regimen and treatment. And let's say someone are born in very poor conditions, as spirits do tell us that it may be because they took advantage of too much resources, and now they have to walk 2 miles to get water. Or that doesn't mean we who have are not going to help them, or that's their thing. No, this is for us to grow in empathy in our hearts and love to go and reach. If everyone had a little bit less, there will be more for everybody, for sure. Cool. And why do we want to believe it? Because it makes sense, because it's logical. And also you retain your individuality. That's the important part of spiritism. We don't go back to the whole. You actually retain who you are, your characteristics. Nobody becomes an angel, goes to heaven just because you discarnate. So whatever we are here, we're actually going to be more exacerbated in the spiritual realm. Because right now, there's a physical body that retains us. Right? If I want to dream about my previous life in Rome, making that up, I can think about it and think I had one. And at night, I might be able to go back and relive those situations. But in physical life, you have to get a trip to go to Rome. In the spiritual realm, sometimes you just have to think about it and you recreate the mental images of those things. So we tend to just be who we are. The spirits that are with us, they don't become perfect just because they're discarnated. And that comes into play when we think about who is around us, what kind of messages are we thinking. So I'll give an example. If you are watching a certain movie, a certain topic, the spirits who like that thing will be there with you. And they will be in the next house, because the next house has different theme that they are watching something else. So we tend to have those affinity groups. They didn't change it just because it discarnated. They stayed around because it's enjoyable to be around us. That's what a lot of addictions of all kinds are, excesses of all kinds are. Because it's not just our will, it's just our connection with them. That's what. And so why do you think we reincarnate? Just because God wants? Could be an answer. God made so, God said so.
Well, we're not done developing after one lifetime. You look at where we started and where we end. We need some more to fully develop.
That's a great explanation. You know, if you think about Jesus, with all the Christ spirits playing the earth 4.5 billion years ago, they only met twice, maybe 3 times so far. There's no way to the light by Emmanuel. You have to know all of the laws of physics to be able to be responsible. Biology, chemistry, quantum physics, things we don't know because science of the earth doesn't know. To be able to command a group of spirits to do it, right? Christ is not physically doing it, but he has a legion of spirits, as we're going to see. One example of reincarnation planning, so we can grasp the idea of how long it took, how much effort it takes, and how many good spirits are around. Because if you look around, they were like, why would someone reincarnate? And at 10 years old, they go for war, right? It doesn't make sense. Like, why would God put us through that suffering? We don't know the answer to that, but we know there's a reason why that group of spirits is going through collective expiations. Just as a group of spirits go through like mudslides or, airplane accident, there's a reason they're all gravitated towards that kind of experience. And they're mentors and guides, and God knows we are not here to judge. We're just here to be able to help in which way we can. But if someone asks you, you can go to question 167, 168. It says, atonement and progressive betterment of humankind. Without this, where would its justice lie? And we keep the books here. So I'm going to actually read the question for you. It's always good to go to the source. And I'm using this, I'm using this book. This translation from Lookness is the name of the publisher. All right, let's see if I'm right. Copy 167. So, all right, pop quiz. How many parts there are to the Spirit's book? 4. Second part is where you have the spirit world, where talks about existences and reincarnation and souls. Third part is what we're gonna mostly see in April, which is the divine laws, and the series on. So March and April, we're gonna go into several topics within the Spirit's book, so we can refamiliarize. Because I know we've studied it before, but it's recommended that we keep because every time we read it, we're like, was it there? Yeah, I remember it is. Because it's there's a difference between reading it and studying it, and if we know this now in the spiritual realm, if we find ourselves in a condition where there's no we don't discarnate and wake up in the library, because it takes time and effort to have access to materials. It's about merit in the spiritual realm. So as much as here, in order to have these, you have to work and have resources to buy, right? So if we put it we lost the tradition of knowing this by heart, the first revelation, very few people could write it down, have the scroll, so people had to recite it and speak it, and it was song-like, so it's easy to remember. And then there was a tradition of people who passed out at home. The disciples had some notes, but a lot of it was they memorized it, because they couldn't just carry. What is the purpose of reincarnation? That's question 167. And here there's a different wording, but it says expiation and progressive improvement of mankind. Without it, how could there be justice? If we don't reincarnate, then we become just what we are this life. What if you or someone, I'm not accusing you, but I'm saying, what if we spent a previous life just taking advantage of people? We made schemes, we stole people's money, You don't have to go far. Go to the book upon Stephen. That person who was the proconsul, he was like, I want that land. I'll take this land and dispose, And then is he just going to hell and stay there forever? No, there's a process in which that person can expiate the wrongs, has to repent the wrongs. They expiate the wrongs in many lifetimes to do it. If someone takes their life, we know there's a valley of the suicide. Are they condemned to stay there forever? No. But they committed an act of a crime against the laws of God. Then there's a time, there's a process, a time determined by God and what they did, There's not for us to judge, for us to pray for them. So Mother Mary can send the messengers to help. It's in the book Memoirs of Suicide. But then it's not fair also that they stand eternity suffering because of one lapse. Because usually those things are very often people make impulsive decisions and they regret the decisions immediately. Because it's not fun, as you see in that book, to be that suffering. So there's justice in us being able to come back. And where can we reincarnate? Hint. Here or elsewhere. Let's start by saying we could reincarnate in a different planet. There are many different colonies in the spiritual realm that people can go after discarnation. But the spiritual book is clear when Kardec is asking, would it be easier for us to just stay over there? No. You stay there, you study, here's the test. As I said, Alcyone was she was in the Pleiades, a different cluster of stars and planets, more evolved. And she's like, I want to help that person. And she was warned, might be brought in the book, Planetary Transition by Duval. It's all about the tsunami in 2005 and how the spirits come and help and why those people were there and why they happened. And it's a location of a certain type of activity on the earth that is not good. And those spirits who were there from all over the planet because of a touristic place. And then tsunami happens and all the kinds of help that comes from everywhere. And then also describes a lot of spirits from other globes reincarnating in difficult conditions on the earth, like the slums. Think about those slums that are huge. Those are difficult lives, but they can, from the inside out, they can improve the lives of the community. So they might come, because if we are here on the earth and God says, go there and reincarnate this slum, I might not have the resources or the strength to not be despair, to not be despondent, and be like, why is God doing this to me, right? The spirits have more preparation and they're willing to serve because they don't have to. And then they come and they help us go up. And we reincarnate depending on our level of elevation. If you go to question 100 or item 100 of the Spirit's book, talks about the different scales of spirits. And I will keep saying this. Let's go there and do our planning. Let's highlight where we are. Maybe we have to make a copy. Maybe we can create some table where we can Xerox. See, each day you highlight where the things that you did that goes to the different levels. And then we plan to be better because we want to be in the second category. We also talk about different countries, different families, different environments. Because those are different experiences. Now, going through or with disability in the US is a different experience than going through disability in Africa or in Asia or in Antarctica. There's only one settlement of man, in a place where there's no infrastructure for people, we're living in the US is hard. We have to fight for these laws. That's different. Being of a different orientation, a different family composition is complicated here, but it's much more complicated also. Those are different experiences. And we reincarnate as men, as women, because those are different experiences. We may switch between lives based on what level of experience we need. In the book, giving example, sex and obsession. It's not in English yet, but Manuel Flamengo de Miranda from Divaldo. Great book to read next to, because Carnival's coming, Mardi Gras coming. If you need to be strong enough to see those images, because you're not going to forget what's happening and the behind the scenes and lead people to do the things that they do, because they're like living off of our spiritual fluids and those kinds of excesses of all kinds, drinking, eating, sexual activity. But there is two characters that did a lot of damage in the previous life, and they are leading colonies in the spiritual world. The other one is reincarnated, remembering his participation, having the visions, having the issues in this life. And then the spirits do a whole host of series of interventions of mystic, this obsession, meetings. Eventually they come to a point that these two characters will reincarnate as twins. One with a severe disability, other also disabled, but they're gonna have to live together. Imagine if you hurt someone else and you're sharing a womb, you can't get away from each other. You know? And then they're gonna be led to a place in Brazil, those places in the middle of the desert, the mud houses kind of situation. And the other person who is reincarnated, who is with the clergy, is gonna go to the area, open an orphanage. And then we look at them, we feel pity for them, but that's a very important expiation for those people based on the damage they did to themselves and others. And what they did before, if you know the book, still used today by people towards one another. So it's very important to us to think about and opens up our hearts, because today I might be here hating someone from somewhere else. I don't know them. I just have this prejudice. Maybe I was there before and I wasn't well treated. Now I hate those people. But tomorrow I might reincarnate there to see how it feels to not have the resources, to feel hatred, to be looked different because of my color of my skin or the way I speak or how I live. So those are important for us to think that we are interconnected. So what the good I don't do this life affect others. And it's very important nowadays that we're thinking about a lot of activities and doing. People think they'll only live once, they want to do everything right now. They want to do everything today. And we want to think about planning. Each reincarnation is planned, is prepared by kind of good spirits. But it's also a fresh start with the things we have to live, with the maybe deficiencies that we come with. Maybe we're not physically deficient, but maybe there's a mental disability. Maybe we can speak, maybe we can see. All of that is in consideration. But sometimes we're granted a fresh start with a group of people. In the book Missionaries of the Light, Luis describes the design, planning, and pavilions where reincarnatory planes are drawn up. These are the language we have: departments, planning, pavilions. And he says hundreds of technicians in matters of embryology and general biology are there to guide the lives of our brothers and sisters. Hundreds, probably thousands of them, from many different colonies. Every major city might have one of these. You know of that. Nosso Lar is in the vicinity of Rio. There's probably a Nosso Lar equivalent in São Paulo, maybe many, because São Paulo is big. So we will discarnate. Hopefully we'll be led to those places. There are outposts, like emergency room, and then you go up. Once you're ready to plan, like Miss Laura in the book Nosso Lar, she and her husband watch. There's 2 lives, I think 2 or 3 lives back, and they can take. That's all they can take. And they're like, okay, we need to go back. We owe so much to Earth, we have to go back. And then they go to the reincarnation pavilion, Nosso Lar, spend time there. And here he describes things that we have now: computers, screens, and you see the people walking, like with little scrolls in their hand. Those are their reincarnatory plans that they describe. And Rowley says that we ask for so much more than we are allowed to have. In a sense, much more disability, much more difficulty. And the mentors are like, oh, maybe the finger doesn't work, but maybe you have the hand, because we recognize that we did wrong, that we want, and we recognize that those difficulties make it easier for us to progress. Because if you have, for example, disability, it's harder to live in a sense, because life is made for people who have their abilities. So you're not focused on certain things because you have to focus on survival if you're poor. So that takes away some of the temptation, perhaps. It makes us appreciate the things that we had in the book. And this is not just spirits, and I'm not picking on disabilities. I have nothing against any disability. I'm just making an example of a society like ours who's full of resources, and certain aspects of society is still hard. If you can't see, you can't drive. If you can't drive in Richmond, you're confined to a certain area because we are made to drive. There's no robust public system, is it, right? It makes it for a different then you develop other talents, other senses that you and I who see don't. Then you have to learn a different language. You have to learn a different, system of communication. And now with these devices that we have, it helps a lot because now we have the technology for the phone and the computer to talk to people, right? So then we help each other that way. We develop things that can help others. I was going to give an example and we'll come back to me. But, there's I remember, in the studies of UVA has a department where they study reincarnation, evidence for reincarnation. So Raymond Moody Jr. is one of them, Ian Stevenson is another one. In their books, they describe children, who remember past lives, birthmarks, certain things, certain defects on hands and feet. And then the children are able to remember, oh, I was shot here, or I caught here, or something happened. And then they come back, there's a spiritual lesion, or the pain, some phantom pains that people don't know where they come from. Medicine doesn't know. And then he was able to show that is correlated with the current situation of that body. And we know from spiritism there is a paraspiritual body. Or there's a damage there will be the potential for a damage in the physical body, because the cells of the paraspiritual body mold the cells of the physical body. So it goes spirit, perispirit, body. So we add to that body of knowledge. So that's an experience that person has to go through. So there are hundreds and thousands of people preparing and help each and every one of us to reincarnate. That includes your mentors. That includes the mentors of your family members. That includes the relatives and the spirit acquaintances that we have. So the good is much greater than the evil that we perpetuate on the earth and the things that are difficult for us. And here they describe in detail the reincarnation of Segismundo. Segismundo is there, and I don't know if you can see my mouse. Here's the family. So there's a couple and a child. And Segismundo needs to reincarnate, but he's in conflict with the dad in the family because they hurt one another. There's a murder going on there. So these three here are incarnate beings having dinner. It could be you and I home having dinner. And these are the spirits coming to help. And they are at night they are still fighting with one another. So there's emissions of energies of despair. And that's why I keep harping on what are you watching, what are you listening to, what are you reading? Because the spirits will be there. And then we go to certain places and we eat food and we feel well. Who is there? Who was there? Maybe the food was legitimately with bacteria and poison, but sometimes it may be just a spiritual. So here he's a little sad because he wants to discarnate, but he's not having different issues with this guy here. And the whole book goes over what happened to one another and why. And there's interventions at night with sleep where they come to terms. And the guy who is going to be Segismundo's dad agrees to receive him. And they forgive one another. But there will be always, that memory. And then you look at your child and you see that they like that child, but not as much this one. They all love the same, but there's a preference. Or there's a preferential treatment. It could be because of throughout time, we've come together and we're trying one more time. And then there's constructor spirits. They're assisting. So they stay outside the home or inside the home because Sigismundo is actively participating on his reincarnation. So he's actively shrinking his spiritual body when he's ready to connect with the physical. And they go in, this person's sleeping, and Eloise is watching. This is by the time he has a treatment where he can see more. So Alexander is doing this selection. If you watch this you can watch this on videos, go Google it. The scientists of, you can do this with animal, you put on a microscope and watch, even with human embryos, you can watch this and video it. One of them tends to swim at the end, swim faster or peel out. And then once that one goes in, the egg changes its composition, preventing the other ones from coming in. There's a chemical mechanism. And there's also like a magnetic field around it. People are showing it. But he's choosing the specific chromosomal that is needed, Sigismundo, to have the physical body that he needs. Because the physical body that you and I have, the proteins we perform, the things we do, are determined by DNA. So he has to pick from all of these. Remember biology? There's millions of them, there's millions of combinations. So he can see the one he wants and he gives one a boost to that one to get there first. And there are ways of seeing this inside someone's body. And we know that's the medicine of the future, is when the physicians will be able to see inside of us. And people can do that. They just don't talk about it. There are studies, mostly in Brazil. There are studies where physicians have this type of X-ray vision, but they can't say it because they're going to be ostracized. Eben Alexander is a physician who went through. He wrote The Map of Heaven. He has an interview on Cardiac Radio. He wrote other books. He's a neurosurgeon who went through encephalitis. He was, for a week, he was given as dead. They said even if he returns, he's not gonna. The damage the virus did, the bacteria did in his system, is fully there, telling people there's a different realm. And he's ostracized by the rest of the community because our science of today is materialistic. It's only what we can see. And then people who come as avant-garde with the studies of reincarnation or the studies of the soul are left behind. And then later, during the sleep, he says that Sigismundo and Raquel is Rachel, that she receives him and she has him on her chest. And she'll carry him around. So every time you see a pregnant lady now, you're going to see that in your head. You're going to visualize maybe one or two, because nowadays there's all twins coming about. Because people are having less children. If they have to come, they're going to come, two at once. So you can't think, this is too hard, I'm not bringing the other one in. They come together for different reasons. But this is happening. And as the story goes, her house is sealed for 3 to 4 weeks to ensure from the spiritual realm that the process is going to go through. Then later is more about us, us, we need to take care of ourselves and make sure, but there is a protection because they work so hard to get there. In the book Life Goes On, we can talk about it another day, Evelyn and Ernest, they discarnate, and there's a whole system of there's the obsessors here and the obsessors on this family. They try to work it out, and they shows that one took the wife of the other. It's like we always sounds like a soap opera, but that's what people are doing daily. And then they work it out that those people who are in the spiritual realm are going to return to those couples in different manners for adoption. And Evelyn and Ernest commit 30 years of their spiritual life, of the earthly time. Because in the spiritual realm, I'm sure they count time different than we do. But 30 earthly years to make sure those babies live a certain way and they come together because they're supposed to get married from different families. So there's a whole host of work. That's why it's so blessed, because we don't think about, nobody thinks about how much time or remembers. Maybe some do. Some like Divaldo Franco might know, remember past lives to be strong enough not to go into mental despair. Because could we, if we remember what we did, if we stole from someone, if we killed someone, we may not. We're going to end up in a psychiatric hospital because we'll feel so guilty and there'll be so much pain. And that's the blessing of forgetfulness. Not that we don't know, we feel like, oh, this is, and that's the question, do I realize this is all? That's why it's so blessed. And that's why we teach the young ones, it's so blessed. We promote health and wellness, and we help people. So when in the moments of despair, they don't take their lives. Or we try to help, we can help everybody. That's Jesus' work. Jesus caring for everyone. We care for the ones around our circle. But we don't be so materialistic that we only care for the ones in our circle.
There was a video I watched that was a lot about this. Was Haroldo Dutra was doing a prayer, and to get into the mood of the prayer, he started talking about that your love. Think about the amount of effort and the amount of people that got involved in your incarnation, and I was like, oh yeah, it's exactly that. I was like, I never thought about that. There's a lot of work.
And there's a work from your parents had to come together, their parents. There's a lot of things that have to fall into certain place. And of course, let's not be naive. The spirits have different ways to make things work, We know, we're looking at these, we know the soul of Sigismundo, spirit of Sigismundo, because it's discarnated, is magnetically attracted to the zygote. That's the technical term for the embryo. Zygote's one cell. The sperm and the egg come together, makes a zygote. That's why we say no abortion, because there's a spirit there. Now, if there's a stillborn, perhaps there was a spirit at some point, and then it wasn't viable. Remember, discarnation is when death is when the body can't sustain life, and then the spirit's taken. Or maybe if there wasn't a body destined, there's a whole host of questions on that area 171 talks about it. That was a trial for both the spirit who wanted to reincarnate because it really wants to make this, and the parents who really wanted to be parents and they couldn't. If there was no body destined, it was more of a trial for the parent. And we see a lot of people today that can't conceive. So there are things behind it that we don't understand. I thank God to science, because science now can help those folks and becomes even more blessed. That we can give everybody that chance as well. So each reincarnation is a fresh start. And that's the importance of childhood. As a new beginning, there's a plasticity to your physical brain that allows you to learn new lessons that will impact your childhood. So the thing we want to think of is, remember we talked about what happened to us led us to today. So if we have the possibility of impacting the next generation, is really telling them that they matter. It took a long time. I know we can't get along. I know I'm a pain, but let's keep this going. Let's get together. Let's work it out. Giving them the tools to understand that being a spirit on the earth, you have to go through the vicissitudes of life. You have a physical body, the body's gonna ache, something's gonna break down, have to fix. And we are blessed to have the tools to fix, some people don't. And that's something, nothing is given to us that we don't have the strength to undergo. What are the implications of thinking about reincarnation? We're going to strengthen family ties, we're going to work towards tolerance, we'll be renewed, and we'll have no responsibilities. Because the hard part about being a spiritist, actually, starting to be spiritist is easy. You come in, you get excited, all this, going to continue to consistently do it. The hard part is this. You know the consequence of your act. You can't undo the knowledge. Once you get the gospel of Jesus in your heart, because this is what Spiritism is, an explanation of the gospel, you can't go back. You can't see the things you did before the same. You're not going to do it again. Or if you do it again, you suffer more, right? So it has to work within you. And that's what's hard for people, because we want to keep doing this stuff. And I'm talking about balance. I'm talking about you're never going to have fun. You're never going to know. It's when you do something, you have to know there are consequences to the action, So that's what it's hard for people to keep going, because it's much easier to go to a different place that doesn't have the moral implications of knowing all of these. So there are plenty of places who have a community feel. There will be music, there will be fun, there will be events, but nobody's asking necessarily, are you applying this to your daily life? Are you really being a disciple of Christ? Because Christ didn't come here and go enjoy himself all the time. This is what we do. You know, we're not the love of Christ, so we need to meet in the middle there and make that.
It's because they live that other life. This is too real for me. I'm talking about me. And I get trapped. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, yeah, this is life. But like they're in that, this is just experience and they have it already. That's I think that's the learning that we need to do is
It's a lot of habit formation from previous lives. And there's a habit formation, and there's a cultural social norm that normalizes enjoyment, enjoyment, enjoyment. One more activity, one more thing. Busy, busy. YOLO. You only live once. Let's go do it, you know. But if you think you only live once, might as well do everything. Right? But then we can show to people that there's a better way. You know. How many of us know people who have claimed to be followers and did things that weren't appropriate? Because it's not coherent, right? It has to be coherent. Spiritism help us to bring that into perspective. And nobody's going to leave here, hopefully, so guilty. No, you did what you did then. Now it's different. Now we try again. We try again. We try again. And that's what we're going to touch base today on reincarnatory plans. So all of that's planned. So the question I want you to think between now and then, now that you know the blessed opportunity that we have, are we fulfilling our plan? What happens when we don't fulfill the plan? How can we work in knowing the fulfillment of our plans? So the question to ask is, where did I reincarnate? What were the people around me who received me? Who was my uncle, my aunt, my grandmother? Who is the group of spirits? Because maybe we didn't get along with the parents, but there were other relatives who were there to support. Maybe we didn't know the parents, but we had someone who accepted us in their lives. Who am I receiving? Who came to be so I could help them? You know, and a lot of us are going to fulfill, hopefully, the majority of the plan. That's a whole host. I'll give you some examples next time. But it comes with self-knowledge, because a lot of what we do today is habit from previous lives. We're not even aware. We think we're choosing, but that's what I did before. I replied to that person that you don't tell me what to do. We're just repeating the Pharisaic thing we did before here. And then we're not aware that it could be different, because it takes time. So it's question 919, self-knowledge. St. Augustine talks beautifully about how to do it every day. But just as exercising, eating well, sleeping, it's hard. It has to become the habit so that today we can help one another. Cool. Let me take a look at what's going on here. All right, friends. So we're going to close our broadcast so we can do our music visualization and prayer, so we can be offline and be together. Thank you for those who join us. We'll see you next week.